Hello, and welcome back to the Next Level NP podcast, where we are transforming women's healthcare one conversation at a time. I'm Marsha Jones. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm also trained in functional medicine and certified through the Institute of Functional Medicine. After more than 30 years in healthcare and after finding myself on the other side of an exam table as a patient, I realized that too many women are being told they're fine while their bodies are telling them a completely different story. This podcast is intended to bring together women with their powerful stories and practitioners who are willing to ask the deeper questions because the story matters, the symptoms matter, and healing begins for most women when somebody finally listens to them. Today, we're talking about something that affects nearly every family: cancer, specifically breast cancer. But this isn't an episode telling you what treatment you should choose. It's about something every woman deserves: time, information, compassion, and the ability to make informed decisions about her own body. So, my guest today is Dawn Painter. And after hearing the words, "you have breast cancer," she found herself navigating things under fear, pressure, conflicting opinions, and a healthcare system that often wasn't prepared to support the questions that she wanted to ask. She chose a path that was deeply personal to herself. Along the way, she discovered that healing involves more than one diagnosis or one decision. So today she's going to share her story with us, not to tell you what to do, but to encourage every woman to become her own advocate and how that asking questions is okay. So, welcome, Dawn. I'm so glad you could be here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. I am so glad that I've met you, and I know that you're going to be an inspiration to so many other women.
Okay, well, I am a wife of my husband for 31 years now. I have three beautiful grown children and um, one, two, three, I guess I have four grandchildren now and one on the way. And so family is very important to me. In September of 2024, I went in for a routine ultrasound and mammogram, and they told me that I had a suspicious lump. And so I went in, I had to come back for a second one to confirm. And then he told me, I'm almost certain you have breast cancer and that I would need a biopsy. So at that, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do the biopsy, and I was pretty concerned about it. But I had remembered, let me step back. As soon as he told me, I believe you have breast cancer, I had remembered that I had heard a story on social media of a friend of mine whose wife had breast cancer and doing a GoFundMe to do an alternative healing in a different country. And so I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to contact this person as soon as I get home. And I did. But I ended up contacting his wife, who I've never met before. And that was my first interaction with her. And she kind of shared with me what she was doing. And so the one thing she told me was if I could do it all over again, I would not get a biopsy. And she had told me that she had sat in the room with several other women when she was getting her treatment, and that was the one regret that they all had, was getting a biopsy. So I say all that to say that during that time, of course, the first thing that I was told was, you need a biopsy and you need it like next week. We're scheduling you. And so as you hear you have cancer, so many thoughts are going through your head, especially for somebody whose family history runs deep. My dad had cancer, my grandpa had cancer, my grandma, and I've watched them all go through treatment. And I had always told my family that if ever it was me, I was not going to do chemo. I didn't know that there was all this other stuff involved as well, but I knew that that was one thing I wouldn't do. And so I say all that to say that there's so many things going on in your mind when you are told that, and so much fear and questions and concerns. And I felt like the biopsy was, we've got to do it, next week. This is, and then after you get your biopsy, we'll have a pathologist read it, and then we'll send you up for surgery. So I'm hearing that, and then I'm hearing my friend share with me the stories, and the reason behind their thought is that sometimes there's seeding and possible, spreading.
Yes.
So I was praying about it, and I was asking other women that I knew to pray with me, and hearing different opinions, and so I was scared. So my first biopsy came in, and I went into the office, and I sat and I listened to the doctor, and he was explaining to me what they were going to do. And I was still unsure that this is what I really wanted to do. And I was just praying, and I'm like, please, just praying that I would have direction. Right before I go in to get the biopsy, and I'm just going to be real honest with you, I went in, but I have to use the restroom. So I went in, used the restroom. I'm still praying, and my friend calls me, and I can't remember what she said, but I remember saying, okay, I'm not ready for this. So I walked out, and I looked at the doctor, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not ready for this. And he said, it's okay. He said, it's not emergent, but I would get it done quickly. So I said, okay. So I ended up rescheduling 2 more times after that, but I just could not get a peace about it. And of course, I had all my well-meaning family members who just wanted to make sure who want to make sure I'm okay, because, they want me to be healthy, and they want me to be there, and they want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And I, that was very hard, because in that it was like, well, you've got to go do this. How do you know what you're having? And, how do you know what it is exactly if you don't go do this? And so there was pressure from not only the medical side, but now your family and well-meaning people who don't, you know, who are well meaning. And so I said, well, I'm just not at peace about it. And I canceled 3 times. Finally, that office told me that they were not going to reschedule me again. That I can't remember, but they were not going to reschedule me again. So I prayed about it some more, and I finally got a peace and said, okay, I will go do this biopsy. And I went to another state in another office and had my biopsy done. I feel that it's really important that whatever decision you make, you have to be at peace about it, because I knew within myself that if I was not at peace about it and I wasn't comfortable with the decision, then I would always question, did I make the right choice? Did I? And every time I would hear something on Facebook or wherever about things spreading, or this or that happening, or, whatever, I would always blame it on that, or I would always, look for that. And so I had to have a peace about it. And I finally did. And I did tell my family members, I said, okay, I'm going to do the biopsy. But after this, I don't want any more pressure on what I'm to do next, because I I need it to be my decision, and I I'm not seeing things the same way that you guys are. In that time, I called several places in different states and was looking for on different treatment centers, and kind of comparing through, and that's when I found you. And then I had looked at other places, and I compared all the different treatments and said, okay, I think I could work with Marcia. And then everything, because most of what I was seeing that you were doing was lining up with everything I was seeing everywhere else, that I could also add in the sauna. I could add in, different things on my own and have about the same treatment, but be able to stay with my family, which I felt was more important than anything, because for me, leaving my family, I felt would be more of a detrimental thing being with them. In the middle of all that, I guess I will add, I was scared at the beginning, and I wanted some answers, and went to my gynecologist, who was the one who sent the orders in for me to get tested. And I went back to her to ask, okay, what do I do? What does this mean? Help me understand. And they were like, well, you're going to have to go see a breast surgeon. There's nothing else I can tell you. And she didn't even see me. And I felt like, wow, you were the one who gave me this, and you were no help. Like, you didn't, I felt like she should have talked to me a little bit and helped me, and she didn't. After I got the biopsy, I was confirmed with having ER/PR positive and hers negative, stage 1, and they wanted to do surgery right away. They wanted to do an MRI and then do surgery right away. And I went to a different breast surgeon to see what their recommendations were, and they were the same thing, but they wanted to do the surgery with taking out several lymph nodes and then doing radiation. I didn't feel like, or I don't feel like, taking out your lymph nodes is always the best thing to do right away. I feel like those are your those are the things that God gave us to help fight. And when we remove them, I feel like that takes our first line of defense away.
Do you feel like in this process they were rushing you to make the decision before you were ready?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like, yes.
Do you feel like they were making it seem like it was an emergency?
Yes, because yes, I can definitely say yes. I do feel like they did make it feel like it was an emergency, and I did schedule the surgery, and then I canceled it, but both of them made it seem like it was an emergency. When I went into the oncologist, because I did go visit one, and I told him, I said, well, I would like to possibly look into doing holistic treatment first. And he said, well, I don't know how I can help you. He said, I could, see you when you have a problem. He said, but all I'm going to do is maybe some x-rays or ask you some questions. He said, but I specialize in chemotherapy and radiation, so I don't really know how I would help you. Yes, I do definitely feel like they said it was an emergency. And I knew in the back of my head, I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to do it naturally. Um, and I felt like that was something I could do. I didn't want to go down the same path I watched my family members go down.
And do you think that they were, I don't want to put words in your head, but what was their attitudes towards your questions? How did they respond to you asking the questions or asking for more time?
Well, I know that the biopsy, he had originally said you can, maybe take a couple weeks, but I would definitely have it done by the end of the month. When I did the surgery part, well, I have to be fair and say that she was also going on maternity leave a few months later. So after the first cancellation, and I went back in to talk to her again, she was like, I would really get this done because you don't want it to get bigger. You don't want it to spread. You don't want, and so I did feel like it was, yes, I don't know how to explain it. It's just that it's like you go in and they do the ultrasound. Oh, we've got to get the biopsy. You get the biopsy and they're like, okay, you've got to get surgery. We have an opening in 2 weeks. We can get you down. We're going to do your blood work. And everything is going so fast. And you're like, wait, I just need a minute to process the fact that you just told me I have cancer. And I need to be able to process that. And what does that look like for me? And what do I want to do? And you're getting ready to do surgery. And do I really want this thing cut out of me? Is that really the road I want to go down? Or are there better options? Or are there better options for me? Maybe it's not a better option for somebody else, but is it a better option for me? And, I want to make it understandable that well meaningly, it wasn't just the doctors putting all that pressure on. It was everyone else too. Like, what do you mean you want to wait? You want to wait? Why? Don't you know this is serious. It can kill you. Don't I know people who've tried to do natural. It didn't work for them, and I was hearing so many things from so many people that it was so fear based. I had to say, y'all have to stop. I need to be able to make the decision for myself. And I did. I said, I'm going to try this naturally. 95% of the people disagreed with me, because all they knew was standard of care. Everybody else, I mean, the other 5% was one of them being my son. And to be honest with you, I feel like through the last few years before my diagnosis, I was being shown things that I didn't realize was going to change my. And one of them was my son coming to me watching a show, and he said, "Did you know?" He said, "I'm going to try this alkaline diet." And he was like, "Did you know that such and such's husband um, had cancer, completely changed his life, did an alkaline diet, and was able to heal his body of cancer?" And I was like, okay, that's nice, and didn't think anything. And then he had told me about another doctor who had a whole alkaline diet thing, and my son was trying it and went on it for a while. So that, and the fact that I learned about my friend's wife, and all of those things came together in my mind. And so the first thing I knew was, hey, my diet has to change. That was the first thing I did before I called anybody else. Everything went out the window, and I started on an alkaline diet. And as I was calling around, and then I found you.
Did anyone ever speak when you first said, okay, I think I want to do this naturally? Did anyone ever speak to you about diet or nutrition before you started doing your own research?
No, no. And in fact, I believe, if I remember correctly, at the oncologist's office, when the oncologist left, the young lady who was helping me said she agreed with me in the diet needing to be changed, but that was just her personal belief, not the belief of the medical community.
Yeah, unfortunately, I see it all the time that no one talks about the adjunctive therapies around breast cancer. And I know that you're not trying to pressure anyone in decisions, and I'm sure a lot of people are hanging on your words and they want to know what I feel about it also. None of this is to tell somebody what to do. It's that you said you have to have peace. And I know you spent a lot of time in prayer and meditation trying to get that peace and get away from all the external pressures that were trying to force you to make a decision. Like it is made to be like an emergency or just a protocol of boom, boom, boom in traditional care. And really, honestly, cancer is not an emergency. It takes a lot of things that develop that over time, and to take a minute to go, okay, wait a minute, how did this happen? What can I do? What other options? Whether you decide to have chemo or radiation or what your path is, it's still important to know what things you can do to make the outcomes better. So, if you do go traditional route, is nutrition included? Is okay. So now, okay, we're going to do this, but what do I do to protect myself from it coming back? Because the recurrence rates of cancer are, very high, very high. You see it on Facebook all the time, and you're watching people's stories. And someone actually just yesterday that I know posted, "I hate cancer." She'd had breast cancer. No one ever spoke to her about nutrition or any of the things to do after they did all the surgeries, the chemo, the radiation, and it's back. And it breaks my heart that it has to be like that. But you tell me about it a lot, because a lot of women don't know this. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. So how much research did you do, and how much did you really have to start standing up for yourself and feel like you were fighting almost, instead of being able to just do what you needed to do?
So I did a lot of research in the diet first, and found a lot of information on doing more, starting out with an alkaline diet, or at least going into whole foods and leaving the sugar and the processed foods behind. I wanted to I was concerned about the many mammograms that were needing to be done. I did a lot of research on what less invasive testing could be done that could get me the same results with what's the word I'm looking for? The same results and have good ratings, or, be able to give me good,
Without,
accurate
yeah.
test results. And because so let me back up. And I also was looking into alternative ways of being able to remove the tumor and not be so invasive and not have to remove the lymph nodes, because mine has not gone to my lymph nodes yet, and I was very concerned about removing my first line of defense. So I did some research into different things that you could do, such as cryoablation. Through that, they were wanting, two different testings like an MRI and so forth. So I went and I looked into an MRI because that was one of the things they needed. And they were wanting to do the dye in it. And I had done some research into the dye and decided that that was not for me. I did, and I was driving all the way to the appointment and decided, you know what, this really is not for me. Because I'm not going to say you don't struggle to get that piece. You struggle to get that piece, and it may take you driving out there and say, "Oh wait, this is really not for me." In that, I was able to find that you could do QT testing, QT imaging, which was a much safer alternative than an MRI and giving you a lot of the same results. So I was able to do that. The insurance companies and so forth, nobody wanted to touch me to do follow-up ultrasounds unless I did a mammogram. But at this point, I've learned a lot about mammograms and realized that those were no longer something I wanted to invest in. And so nobody would see me. I was even calling places out of state,
Yes.
hours away. And we did finally find a place, and they saw me. But then the radiologist spoke with me, and after speaking with me, he said, I need to tell you that you must go get surgery. And I said, well, and you need to do treatment. And I said, well, I am doing treatment, because at this point I had started the high dose vitamin C, and I'm doing the working with you and working on the different puzzle pieces of cancer, and getting my liver put back together and my mitochondria and all of that. And I said, well, I am doing treatment. And he said, no, I'm talking about actual treatment. You need to get this removed or you are going to die.
Yeah, I remember he was pretty abrasive with you.
Yeah. And I said, well, I believe that. And I said, I believe that, God has given us everything that we need to be able to heal ourselves. And he said, well, I am a man of faith as well, and I believe that you are sinning if you do not go have this surgery. And so I was like, okay. So I walked away from there in pieces, crying. And then I went from crying to just really upset and angry.
All the emotions, yes.
Yes.
And did you feel
So,
bullied?
yes. And then the next time I had my grandchildren with me, and he saw me that time, and he said, I will not see you again if you do not go have surgery. And I said, well, I'm looking into cryoablation. And he said, no, that is not surgery. And unless you have surgery, I will not see you again, because I am not going to watch you die. I've seen too many women come in here and do nothing, and it get worse, and they have a horrible, miserable outcome. And he looked at my grandchildren, who thought they were my kids, and told me, do you want to be here for your children? And I was like, okay. So I walked out and asked the front office, I said, can he really not see me? And they were like, yes, because,
He owns the practice.
yes. So, um, and so after that, I searched some more for other places. And actually, I think that's when I was looking at a state.
You were willing to drive to Georgia, if I recall correctly. That was the one place you had found that was going to be willing to do your ultrasounds.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
part of, so as you were talking about the mammograms, mammograms are a standard screening. And so we do the screening. But if there is a confirmed diagnosis, then, or a suspicious lesion, they want an ultrasound. So we were trying, as I was trying to help as being an advocate, trying to get around this mammogram issue and just let's do serial ultrasounds. Okay. Let's monitor it. Let's give you a chance to, and you were not being, you weren't abrasive with anyone. You weren't, obstinate. You were just like, please let me basically process this. Let me try this. I want to monitor it. We were monitoring blood tests, like an LDH, some of your cancer markers. You're just like, just give me a chance. It's not that you were going like, I will never, anything like that. And everywhere you went, I just remember you just kept getting those kind of responses. And I was angry because I was like, you can't tell her what to do. It's her body. Let's do and so the workaround was finally they agreed to do the ultrasounds, but they said they won't speak to you.
Yes.
I have to say, and you've seen the reports, every time a report comes back, there's usually some little snippy comment at the end of the reading about you refusing treatment.
Yes.
Which, how does that make you feel?
Well, it did bother me for a while. Now I'm just like, whatever, but at first, I mean, I think I even ran to your office just in tears, just like, oh my, this is what he said, like I was in tears, and it would bother me and it would scare me for a little bit. And then, I would just pray about it and say, okay, no, I'm not going to listen to him. And now I see his snippy little comments and I'm like,
Yeah,
whatever.
whatever. And so I would like to share at this point, let's go ahead and let everybody know that you've had no progression whatsoever.
Right. No
In that
progression.
region. None. And
Yeah.
we actually look at it really close because we're like, was it even just a little bit less? I mean, I am so happy for the way things are going. So like you said, and let's talk about, and along with that though, what is the dedication you've put in to this? It's not, so if somebody says, I want to heal this naturally. It's not just you're going to take certain supplements. It's not, it's a lifestyle change, but it's a lifestyle that is why cancer develops. So it takes a lifestyle change to help to try to treat this naturally. I mean, we're talking nutrition and sleep and hormones and stress management, eliminating toxins. Like there's a lot that goes to this. So tell me what your life, how your life changed after the diagnosis and the things that you've done.
But I'm going to back up just for a minute because I don't know if you remember, even and I'm going to say this because I think it's important that you look back at your test because one little comment in your records that was written, I don't know if you remember, but he wrote it in a way that that made it sound like there was new development and it was growing. And I was like, I don't think this is right. I just felt inside, I'm like, something's off. So I went back through every note that he wrote from, every ultrasound report that I had previous. And I was like, these are the same ones. And so you really have to watch for yourself and you have to do the research because no one's going to go and tell you that this option's out there or that option's out there. Not in the medical community. Nobody was telling me those things. And again, because they disagreed with my line of treatment, the way that the little notes were written made it sound like it was getting worse. And yet you have to look back and you have to look back. Sometimes you just have to do the research for yourself or because I could have just followed what he said and, which is what I feel was the intended purpose of his note. But, okay. But as far as lifestyle change, absolutely. Everything in your life has to change. Everything in my life had to change. And it my husband's like, I don't know anybody as dedicated and persistent and strong as you.
I agree.
because I had to go from, I think when we first started, I was eating all vegetables, no fruit, so as I said, all my diet changed. There was moments when I had breakdowns because I would watch everybody else eating everything, and I would look at my salad again and again and again, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I would make things and I'd say, okay, this is a taco. And I would have to train my mind to think, this is a taco, even though it was a piece of chard with beans and, whatever in it. Or this avocado mixed with cacao is ice cream, or, whatever. I had to train my brain into being okay with what it was that I was eating. So all of that had to change. Then all of my I wore makeup since I was 12. I changed no makeup, and all my hair, beauty products, everything. I started researching and seeing the toxic load that is in all of your beauty products, your deodorant, your hair products. And one thing that as women we don't think about is our intimate products, our pads, our tampons, and the toxins that those carry. And so I switched all of that to organic cotton, and I did the mold testing and found out that our home had mold in it, and we had to renovate the home for the mold. I had an electrician come over and look for dirty electricity and find out that the Wi-Fi router that is in my bedroom had deadly amounts of Wi-Fi going through. And what I mean by deadly is it was able to change your DNA. It could cause miscarriages. And so the changing of your DNA is kind of what leads to the cancer cells change, your cells changing. And I'm not blaming it just on that because as I found out, cancer is a huge puzzle with many different pieces. And so I changed my water system. And I also, through you, we were able to do the testing on any, what did we do?
We did the Dutch test for elimination. We did a gut test for inflammation, found the mold.
Yes, yes. And then the H. pylori and all of that. One thing I'm still working on that is the hardest for me was stress. And
Uh-huh.
um, I'm trying right now to start detoxing my home with all of the clutter that I have because I know that for me personally, that's a huge stress on me. Going through emotional things, I think I explained to you that there's a book that talks about the different emotions and how those are tied to your healing as well and different aspects in your bodies. So a friend of mine had brought to my attention that aspect, and she brought the book to my attention, and she said you should get this book. It will look at some of the areas in your body that are having trouble, and it can tell you what it's connected to. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm okay. And that night I had a dream, or I woke up and I was like, I have a problem with bitterness. So I ordered the book the next day. The book came in. I looked up breast cancer in the right breast, and it was linked to bitterness, with specifically with a female family member. Like, okay, and things started clicking. And so in that, I had another wonderful friend who I would do Bible study with, and she said, "I want to do a Bible study on something that's going to help you." And I said, "Okay, I feel like I need to work on forgiveness."
Big one.
We did that, and in my head, I was like, I could list few people that I felt like I needed to forgive. But I'm going to be honest, as I'm going through it, I'm like, no, I can now see that there's a lot of people I need to ask to forgive me. Like there was a lot of things I thought it was going to show me what the problems I had with other people. And then I realized that there was a lot of stuff within me that problems with other people that I needed to work on as well.
Which is the hardest part? Looking inside of you, and that's part of, the book that I have coming out soon is forgiveness, and we all have to do it. And you think that all is great with you, it has to be everybody else, right? But yeah, forgiveness, you don't have to always forget, especially if it's somebody else, but it's a process. There's a lot to working in the emotion. And that's why dealing with a diagnosis such as any kind of diagnosis that is, impactful on your life, you've got to process a lot and a lot of emotions. And I don't think we give people enough time for that or enough credit for the emotion. And so it's always an evolutional process. But when you have deep-seated emotions, that produces inflammation. Inflammation is the driver of most all chronic diseases. And if we decrease inflammation, we're going to improve things overall. So yeah, working on the mind. The body is sometimes the easiest part. And that's why I think with modern healthcare, we don't always take into account all the other things. Like you said, you go through the process of, okay, let's get the biopsy, let's do the surgery, let's do the chemo, let's do the radiation. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Then what? You're still left with all these emotions and all these things, and the traumas, emotional traumas run deep. So learning how to get through that is wonderful. And I know that faith is a big part of your life. Do you want to talk about that? How faith has helped you through all of this and with your emotions and traumas?
Yes. And I will add too, I had to work on my sleep because I was only getting like 4 hours of sleep. And so now I'm conscious. I write down every day when I went to bed, when I woke up, because I want to make sure I get at least a certain amount of hours of sleep now. So there's a lot to work on. Faith wise, absolutely. I don't know that I would be able to get through this without my faith and being able to, you know, pray through things and ask for help and what path should I go on, and what should be my next step, and so forth, and just being able to work on forgiveness and showing me those things that I need to change, and rather it be health wise, as far as like physical changes, or rather it be spiritual changes, so yes. Sorry,
I
lost my
That's
thought.
okay. I've had several of my female patients tell me that breast cancer actually saved their life
Yeah.
because it changed their life. It was something that made them stop in their tracks and evaluate everything that had been happening and get a grip on things that they needed to work on, that was the only thing that was going to bring that realization. Something that drastic was what was needed. And so that is a different perspective. And oftentimes we want to look at the negative, or we, get caught up in a lot of the everyday and the minute pieces. But we have to remember, in everything, it's an experience, and there is something to be grateful for. Is there something that you're grateful for out of this?
I think that, wow. I think it's showed me a lot. I think it's, showed me a lot of me and things that I need to, like I said, change, learning to let go of things. And I don't know, I guess I'm grateful for, it has shown me a lot.
Has it changed your definition of strength? What you consider is strong?
Yes, yes. I remember that I had read this story about this Jewish woman, and she had gotten cancer, and she believed that if she had to remove one of her breasts, she didn't need that breast. And she wanted to know, her question was, what is it that I'm supposed to learn through this? And so that story always stuck in my head. So I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to learn through this? And I think that's it. I'm learning a lot through this. I'm learning a lot through this of, rather it be that it was very hard for me to let go of my grandchildren, and my daughter got married, and, I didn't realize how much, okay, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings in case she listens
It's
to
fine.
this, for me, I didn't want to let them go. And I'm learning to be me through all this, because I also knew that I needed to let them go, because, well, I didn't realize it until after I let them go, how much I needed that as part of my aspect of healing, to be able to find me, or to be able to have a minute to me. to know what quiet is, or to have that time to myself. I'm learning a lot of, I guess I am learning perseverance. This walk, especially if I can't speak for the standard of care side because I didn't do any of that. I can only speak for my side of trying to heal in as natural as I can. And so for me, I'm learning patience and perseverance and how to continue to walk through something when there's days you just don't want to. You don't want to pick up that salad again. You don't want to take, you just want to be normal. You don't want to take your food into the restaurants. You don't want to, have to worry about packing a whole cooler food full of food just to go away for the weekend, all of that. I'm just learning to persevere and keep going, and patience in the fact that I hear stories and women's cancers are gone. I'm NED. I have no evidence of disease. I got it removed. I had my chemo. I'm NED. And I'm like, I'm stable and I'm okay with that. It's stable. It's not moving. It hasn't progressed and I'm okay.
And I want to highlight something here because I don't think you give yourself enough credit ever. I think that you're such an amazing woman and an inspiration, and I admire you for the things you have done because you didn't stop living. You've done what, 2 mud runs now in the last year? I think it was 2 in the last year. I want you to tell everyone about that because I know you were worried about stressing yourself, but I encourage you, do the mud run. But I would like you to tell us about your experience there, like a little bit about the breast cancer support that goes along with Mud Run and what you experienced.
Okay, so yes, so mud runs. I'll first say my first mud run I did with my daughter and loved it. And when I did it at first, it was like under the Pink Army um, banner, and my aunt had just been diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. So I said, okay, you know what? We'll do this in light of my aunt. That was in August of 2024. I didn't know that I would actually be running for myself because a month later, I would find out that had breast cancer. Okay, so the next year came around and it was time for the med run. That was my first one right after my diagnosis, 6 months later. And I did that. And then they had a program that started. And I am going to get to your question on the med run part that started in the middle. They had a program where they were asking for 20 women to sign up to be part of their Pink Army Foundation. And they would go through your nutrition, and the mental health, and your exercise, and something else. And so I did that program. That was just another tool, and which was very helpful, especially on the mental health aspect. And the nutrition, I was pretty okay, but if you remember, we were working on the protein aspect, and so that played another tool in helping me understand the protein. And so anyways, I went through that. I'm now an ambassador for the program. It's a very good program. It's a free program that's offered to women who are fighting through breast cancer. And anyway, so I did my third med run this year, and I was able to meet another ambassador, or another lady who went through the program with me, or who went through the program, and I met her, and we were waiting in line to go up to for our turn in the run. And so it's a very hyped thing. So you get into the starting line and they're doing exercises and they're calling people up to the stage, and they're asking, who are my breast cancer survivors out there? And the lady who was standing next to me, she was been, I don't know how many years of a breast cancer survivor, and she goes, come on, let's go. And I said, well, I'm still battling it. And she said, well, you're alive, aren't you? And I said, yes, and so I went up, and so the lady interviewed us, and she's like, and how far have you been? And I said, well, I chose to, do all natural, and I am been stable for 2 years. And I said, but I am still, I do still have the tumor, but but I'm, I'm stable. And so she's like, and this is what living looks like, and so forth. And so that was really neat because I didn't see myself as a survivor. I saw myself as someone still going through it. And so, and then a month later, I did another mud run. And this time I was doing it and being part of the Pink Army Foundation, they called me back up on stage again. And, so I was able to share the story again. So that was really neat. And
Simple change in perspective.
yes, yeah.
Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on is you turned this around. So you created a purpose out of this, and it's not just about yourself. You started helping other women. Tell me about that.
So one day I was listening to Chris Fork, and he had mentioned that there was a support group called Healing Strong. And so I was like, oh, what is that? So I went on the Healing Strong website and saw that there was a support group for women, and they were branches off, support groups that branched off of that main hub to help other women or other men, other people, just in cancer and disease, period. Because a lot of it doesn't have to be cancer, it can be disease in general, anyways. And so there's not a lot of support groups out there for that are not, how can I say this? It's a different support group. This is a faith-based support group that helps you have the best, whether you are doing traditional treatment or you are trying to do the all natural, naturopathic, holistic way. It helps you in all areas because the ultimate goal is to keep your body in the best health it can be to go through whatever it is you need to go through to get you to be at your optimal health. So I saw that I could sign up to be a leader and decided that, I don't see anything here, and I needed the group as much as I felt like other people would need the group. And so it is a way to help learn how to have the most optimal health that you can. It's faith based and also just a way to support one another as you go through this, because cancer is one of those things that you feel alone, and yet the group that you're in, like this special club, and that sounds strange, but you're in a new club now, and the only other people who can understand this new club that you're in is the ones walking through it with you. And my family, they try really hard to understand, but they can only understand so much, and until you're in the same shoes, it's really hard to understand. So it's a special club to be in. But again, it doesn't just cater to cancer, it caters to all disease because, again, so that is Healing Strong. So we have a local group. It's Healing Strong, Hampshire County.
Okay.
So I have a Facebook page. I just started the Facebook page back up because I was doing in-person groups, but in this day and age, it seems like people are more easily reached by Zoom. So we're now going to turn it into a Zoom group.
Does a woman have to be in Hampshire County, or can anyone join your group?
Anyone can join. I will say there are local groups that may be in person. So if in person is more of your preference, I wouldn't want to deter you from looking for a in-person group, but absolutely, I have
And I'm going to get
invited
that
a few
information
women
from you,
who
Dawn, so we can put
live
it
out
in
of state
our notes.
and are not in Hampshire
Awesome.
that I know personally, and you know, so
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely get that put into the notes so that everybody else who's met here connected with you can join your group and get some help as well. And so we have to start wrapping this up. I mean, I'm loving your story, and I hope it's brought a lot of insight to other women. But if you had advice for women, imagine the woman that just got the call. She's scared, she's upset, she doesn't know what to do. She's listening to this episode. What would you tell her?
I would tell her to slow down, take a breath, and while there's a lot of well-meaning people who want the best for you, who are also scared, that you need to make sure that whatever decision you make, rather you do standard of care, rather you go the natural approach, you need to make sure that you are at a complete peace on for yourself. Because once you have a peace, then you can stand by the decision you make. And I believe that that plays a big part in helping you get through the situation, is having a peace about the decision you made. Because when you don't have a peace, you're more likely to veer off, And I would tell you that if you decide to do the natural approach, have patience, because it's not going to happen overnight, and you have to have patience. And one thing I have to remind myself, is, my granddaughter's like, Grandma, when are you ever going to be able to eat like this? And her biggest thing was that I got to eat mango again, you know, because that was our special thing, was to eat mango, and so now I can have a little bit of mango, even if it's just a slice, and she's okay with that, and she'll ask me, when are you going to get to eat like this? And I said, I probably will never go back to the things that I did before, because I think that, I know this isn't probably what you asked me, but I think that's where this isn't a quick fix. I don't think it's something that you get scared, you change your diet, you change your everything about you get healed from cancer, and then you go back to normal, or what you feel was your normal. This has to become your new normal, because I don't know if I heard it from you or who I heard it from, but I once heard that if your body knew how to make cancer before, it knows how to make it again. And so you have to, one silly thing, I tell everybody, I'm like, it's really hard sometimes to go into the grocery store. I want to get that ice cream, or I want to get, and there's certain occasions like Passover that I did have, you know, uh, some unleavened bread, and I did, but so I'm not saying that maybe never, but I think that one occasion. But I think that, where was I? So my point is, so I have to train my mind. Like, I have to look, and this is funny, and I'm not telling you to do this, but I walk in the store, and there may be a time that I want something, and then I have to go, no, that's poison. Go back to the vegetable aisle, and I have to tell myself, like, things like that, right? Like, that's extreme, but I do say that. I'm like, that's poison. I'm going over here, whatever it takes to get you to come back and say, I chose this path that I need to walk on, and I'm going to do it. And I may never go back to this normal, and that's okay, because I don't ever want to go through this again. And so, but I think, slow down, take a breath. It's, as you always tell me, it's not an emergency, and make sure that you are at peace, because that, along with your faith, is going to be that thing that walks you through it. I know if I wasn't at peace, I would question everything I do, and I would have probably fallen by now, but I'm okay. I had to be at peace with my decision, and I am.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing not just your story, but your heart with us today. So, whether someone ultimately chooses surgery, chemo, radiation, integrated care, combination of both of those things, every woman does deserve to be heard, respected, and supported, no matter what decision. So your story reminds us that informed decisions begin with asking questions, seeking an understanding, and finding a healthcare team that's going to partner with you, not just bully you, because no woman should ever feel bullied, dismissed, or rushed through one of those big decisions in her life. So if Dawn's story resonated with you, I want you to know that there is support available. Find her group. I'm going to put it in the chat for you. Find somebody you can work with. One of the biggest gaps I see in healthcare is that people are often handed a diagnosis, but not a roadmap for understanding that there's a lot of factors that go into it. I actually have a definition for cancer. It's a lifelong, genetically predisposed metabolic disease of the mitochondria that requires a lot of energy, resulting from an immune system that has been broken by toxic exposures, lack of nutrition, fueled by inflammation, which is rapidly on the rise, targeting estrogen dependent reproductive organs and the number one cause of death in the United States right now. And it's only escalating. So that's my definition of it. And that is also how I help to approach the way that I help women with their cancers. So I do have an introduction to holistic cancer program rooted in functional medicine. It is not a treatment protocol. It is to help you to start understanding from that definition that I just gave you, the things that play a role in developing cancer and treating and living beyond cancer. We explore nutrition and hormones and toxins, stress, lifestyle, all the different pieces that can support overall wellness during and after the diagnosis, no matter which route you choose. So it's designed to complement, not replace, the guidance of your oncology medical team. My goal is to help individuals become informed, empowering women in their own care, to provide the support that they need to navigate through this very personal journey, as you've heard. You can find the link in the notes below if that's something you're interested in. You know, if you want to learn more about me, if you want to work with me, go to my website, marshajonesnp.com. I would love to work with you and walk alongside you in your journey, or just help to give you some information. I just think that is an important reminder for all of us in healthcare as practitioners that whether we agree with every decision a patient makes, it isn't the point. It's not our place. Our responsibility is to educate, listen, respect informed choices, and to continue caring for that person as the whole person they are, no matter what they choose. It's their body. And patients don't stop needing us just because they ask difficult questions. And in many ways, that's actually when they need us more. So as a practitioner, this is why I created Next Level NP, because I believe practitioners are uniquely positioned to bridge that gap between their traditional medicine and the whole person care. We don't have to abandon science to become better listeners. We don't have to dismiss a patient's questions simply because they're exploring complementary therapies. We can provide the evidence-based informed guidance that helps the patient understand risk, benefits, and ensure that they feel respected throughout their journey. So my mission is to equip nurse practitioners with education, confidence, practical tools to have those conversations, especially in women's healthcare and hormones, functional medicine, root cause care, whatever you want to call it. Because transforming healthcare doesn't start with changing the system overnight. It starts with one conversation, one patient, and one provider. One at a time, we can do this. So thank all of you. I would like to thank all of you for joining us for this Next Level NP podcast. And if today's conversation resonated with you, encouraged you, challenged you, or reminded you that there's another way, please subscribe, share the episode, leave us a review, get in contact with Dawn. I read all the comments and I will respond. Message me if you have questions. And if you're an NP and you're ready to practice with more confidence, more purpose, more freedom, I invite you to go to nextlevelnp.com, because together we're transforming women's healthcare, one provider, one patient, and one conversation at a time. So until next time, never stop asking why, never stop advocating for yourself or for your patients. And remember that every story matters.